Good morning, everybody. It's 2 minutes past 10. There are currently 54 people signed in, so good morning to you all. We did have over 130 odd people signed up, so we'll just give them a few more minutes to log in, get themselves comfortable. And once the numbers stop climbing, we'll begin. Okay, good morning, everybody. It's just about settled down now. It hasn't increased in a number of whiles, the number of attendees. So we've got 61 people from all over the place, I guess, to join us for our first BuildingSMART UK and Ireland Assemble meeting. I'm hoping this is going to be quite an interactive session, but given the current situation the world is in, we're online, so it does make it a little bit more challenging, but we are hoping that whilst there are elements of us presenting to you, please do engage as much as you can on the chat and on the questions. We do have a group of people overseeing the chat, so if there's anything pertinent that comes through as and when we're doing these presentations, by all means chip in and ask whatever you need to ask us in relation to what's going on at the time. There will hopefully be time at the end also for more questions, but we are taking questions at the end of each one of the three presentations, and that's me, Emma Hooper and Nick Nesbitt. So sit back, enjoy, but hopefully engage as much as you can. Okay, so for those of you who don't know me, this is me. I'm an architect by background. I haven't actually practiced architecture for about 5 years now. I am a director of digital at Roy Haskell DHV and founder of Digital Green. In terms of my pro bono work that I do, I'm vice chair of the UK BIM Alliance, chair of BuildingSMART UK and Ireland. I sit on the B555 drafting committee at BSI. And I'm the founder and compere of BIM Open Mic events. Today, obviously, what I'm doing is wearing my BuildingSMART UK and Ireland hat, but also, as I hope you'll appreciate, a bit of the vice chair of UK BIM Alliance. So, in terms of the agenda today, the original in-person session that was due to be held in Newcastle was going to be a 3-hour interactive session. But we've reduced it to 2 hours and taken this online. And it may well inform how we deliver these sessions and hold these sessions in the future. So depending on the success of this format, we'll drive whatever we do in the future. As I said, this is the first Assemble meeting for BuildingSMART UK and Ireland. And indeed the first meeting that BuildingSMART UK and Ireland have had for a long time. So we are looking to enliven that group, grow the community, and make sure that we're doing what we can in terms of representing the UK and Ireland at an international level. So I'm going to run through a bit about the formation of buildingSMART UK and Ireland, the context with buildingSMART International, a bit about the organisation and membership, the activities, and how anyone in the UK community can get involved. And again, we've got time for questions, plenty of time after my session. Then we have Emma talking about the essentials of OpenBIM, and then a question session after that. And then finally, Nick Nisbet running through an update on IFC for infrastructure, and then the summary questions and wrap up at the end, with the aim of getting finished no later than midday, but we may well end up finishing sooner than that, depending on how interactive you guys are. But first, we are BIM folks. We love an acronym and initialism, and if you're new to the world of buildingSMART, then you're going to love it in terms of its wealth of acronyms and initialisms. But we've got two potentially new ones for you today. buildingSMART International is frequently referred to as BSI. In this context, not to be confused with BSI, which is also in lowercase, which is the British Standards Institute. It doesn't help that they're closely intertwined in terms of organisations, but that's where we are right now. So we also have then our UK and Ireland chapter of buildingSMART, which we abbreviate to bSUKI. So if you do hear me say that, I apologise. It's just a whole lot easier than saying buildingSMART UK and Ireland all the time. So apologies if I slip into that during this presentation and ongoing. I'm sure you guys will also do that at some point if you become involved. Secondly, another apology, and I do realise that there's great work by Emma Hooper last year in terms of creating what we're now calling Assemble, to generate a list of people who are enthusiastic about OpenBIM and about buildingSMART UK and Ireland chapter, and about how they want to engage with us and do things. So it's an apology for me. I should have reached out to you already, and I personally haven't, but we do have all of your details, your email addresses, and hopefully we'll add to that today with a number of people that we have on the call. So as we go through today, we will be running through some Slido questions. I have a series of questions that I'd like to ask now. So if everyone can get themselves ready, I don't know whether this is going to work, but hopefully you should then be able to see the link. If you go to Slido, either in online or scan the QR code that's on screen now, the event is called bSUKI. And then we can start the questions. If I start. Okay, we've activated the quiz. And there are people joining in, which is good. Okay, once there's a significant number of these people on here, we'll start the first quiz. We're already logging in, it's nice to see people getting interactive, good. All right, getting towards half the number of people. Okay, right. There's half the number of people on there, so I'd just like to run through these questions. It is down as a quiz. That does force me to select a right and wrong answer when I'm setting this up. Don't fear, there is no right and wrong in this, so just answer them as honestly as you can, because we do really need to drive how we create the next few sessions of bSUKI Assemble. All right, who's unmuted themselves there and coughing? Everyone just make sure they're muted, please. Okay. So just going to continue with this, make sure everyone has answered as soon as they can. Okay, still people answering, which is good. Okay, still people going. If everyone that's in can just hurry up and answer, that'd be good, because I don't think we can move on to the next one until everyone that's on the call or on the Slido has answered. It's good, we've got a number of people in there, we're hovering around 48 for now. Okay, this question is obviously just to gauge awareness of people that are on the call who represent a certain portion of the industry, and how fully aware you are of Building Smart UK and Ireland, and what the routes are towards contributing to both local and international projects. Okay, next question is enabled. Are you signed up as a member of Building Smart UK and Ireland? And while we're doing that, we can just flip back to the results. Actually, we'll do that at the end.
Casey,
Okay.
could you?
Yes, ma'am.
Casey, could you just remind people how they get into Slido? Because I've had a couple of questions come through. Anyone
that goes to slido.com, it'll ask you to enter an event code, and the event code is this one here, bSUKI. It should find it as soon as you start typing BSU, because there's not many events that start with BSU. Alternatively, you can scan the QR code that's on screen now. Okay, interestingly, and kind of expected, the number of people that are on the call, or the number of people that have voted or answered the question on the call, 57 of you, 86% of you aren't currently signed up as a member of Building Smart UK and Ireland. That's clearly something we hope to change. But let's see how we go by the time we're at the end, or by the time we get to midday today. Okay. Probably then we know the answer to this one. Have you ever attended a Building Smart room, whether virtually or in person? I can probably name the people who have, based on knowing who's on the call. But it's a good question anyway, because it raises the question of what is a Building Smart room, which we will answer later on. Okay, right, people are answering quite quickly now, which is good. This is in preparation for other people using Slido later, so hopefully we'll see. Okay, about the same numbers. That'll probably settle on 87% at some point, but yep, as we expected. And then the final question for now, would you like and are you able to contribute to a Building Smart room or project? There's three options here. This is just us gauging what people in the community can contribute in terms of time, or whether it's possible for them to. Okay, I'm getting to around 60 again. I'm slightly nervous about looking at these results, but let's see what they are. Okay, good, that's positive. All right, so at the moment it's 27% say that yes, they'd like to, but they don't have time. And 70% of you say that yes, and you're able to. And 3% say no. So thank you very much for that. That's really quite encouraging for us as the people that are currently involved in Building Smart UK and Ireland. But it's very much about us understanding what we can do with you guys and what you're able to achieve with us. So just in addressing a few of those, the first question about context, organisation and membership, about what it is really. Building Smart UK and Ireland. We're going to leave that there just as a group chapter title. It sits within and next to the UK BIM Alliance. It's very much part of the UK BIM Alliance, for those who didn't know, and this has happened since 2017. When it was brought into the control of the Alliance from BRE. Now, this is hopefully going to address some of the potential confusion that's out there in the industry, still prevailing, that they are distinct and separate groups. Now, in terms of what they do and how they operate, they may well be different groups of people. But the UK BIM Alliance, of which I'm vice chair, as I've said, I'm also chairing Building Smart UK and Ireland. So we have that connection there. The outgoing chair was Anne Kemp, who is the chair of UK BIM Alliance. So we're very much one and the same, but handling different projects with different groups of people, different specialisms and expertise. Our legal entity overall, this applies to the UK BIM Alliance and Building Smart UK and Ireland, is Syria. And that enables us to have an accounting system, the finance system, the membership, all dealt with and covered legally within an organisation without having to make ourselves as organisations overly onerous. So we are there operating as a joint couple of groups. We do discuss exactly the same topics in most of our meetings in the UK BIM Alliance exec meeting. That's where we update the wider group about what's going on within Building Smart UK and Ireland. Added to that, obviously, Building Smart UK and Ireland is a chapter of Building Smart International, and I'm not quite sure of the number of chapters around the world, but I think there's over 13 chapters that are distinct and active around the world. And they all operate in basically the same way, with various different minor regional, social and business tweaks. But we are there to represent a portion of the world at an international level when we're talking about Open BIM and all the things that Building Smart International do. For those of you who don't know, this is taken straight from Building Smart International's website. It's worth reading, it's worth sharing with people so that people within your individual organisations know what Building Smart is. I'll share these slides with you after this call, so you can share these and use them for your own purposes. But Building Smart is the worldwide industry body driving the digital transformation of the built asset industry. Building Smart is committed to delivering improvement by the creation and adoption of open international standards and solutions for infrastructure and buildings. Building Smart is the community for visionaries working to transform the design, construction, operation and maintenance of built assets. Building Smart is an open, neutral and international not-for-profit organisation. So when you are talking to your organisations at various different levels, it's good as a base and an understanding to appreciate what the organisation is and who's involved and how they do the things they do in terms of international standards. In terms of membership to UK and Ireland, anyone can be a member of Building Smart UK and Ireland or Building Smart or UK BIM Alliance. So that's what we need to make clear, is that any individual can join in to the conversations, to the updates, which is why we make these things available to you in terms of sharing and understanding of what goes on at international level and at chapter level. So anyone, no matter who you are, where you are around the world, around the UK, you can join Building Smart UK and Ireland, contribute, engage, spread good news, do whatever you need to do. enter competitions and all those things, and be part of an active, vibrant chapter. In terms of company membership, there are ways and means. We always need finances to operate these things. buildingSMART, as we said, is a not-for-profit organisation, and buildingSMART, as part of the UK BIM Alliance, do need money to be able to operate and do the things that we do. So there are various different routes, and we are building the picture as to what contributions people can make both financially and contributions in kind in terms of time. But there are various different scenarios, and this is determining a bigger picture as to how we can contribute to the overall buildingSMART international picture. So in this scenario, a company, as all individuals can be members, but as can companies. But if a company approaches the UK BIM Alliance and wants to support and become a patron or supporter financially, they can approach us and do that. They will also be invited to engage with buildingSMART UK and Ireland at a conversational, a sharing knowledge level or an expertise level. Second scenario is where a company approaches buildingSMART UK and Ireland and becomes a company member. We'll go to the next slide and you see what benefits there are at various different levels of membership. And then we've got scenario 3, where we have UK-based international companies that approach buildingSMART International or UK and Ireland and would like to become what we actually call is multinational members, and they select UK and Ireland as one of the chapters they'd like to be active in and a member of. So this is all being formed as we speak. There are some clarities that aren't driven by buildingSMART UK and Ireland, but are driven by buildingSMART International that we need to weave into our bSUKI approach. But it is forming and it is becoming more solidified and more clear to all involved. So in terms of company membership, I'm not going to run through all the benefits, but you can see there's a standard company membership, a multinational membership, and a strategic membership, and that enables Strategic Advisory Council access. And you can go online onto the buildingSMART International website and find out which types of organisations and companies are what type of members. As it says on the left there, as a buildingSMART member, your organisation can take full advantage of many of the benefits available from active project participation to branding. You'll be part of a global network of professionals and assist in the development and implementation of international standards and compliance initiatives. So lots of different ways to get involved, lots of levels of how we can get involved, but we do need to make sure that the UK and Ireland chapter is better represented. So in terms of our organisation, you may have seen a similar diagram to this based on how the UK BIM Alliance is formed. But in terms of buildingSMART UK and Ireland, the chapter is organised in a certain way. I don't like to view this in the same way as the UK BIM Alliance. We don't like to view this as being the committee being the all and sundry doing everything. This is very much not that. The committee are there to manage the projects and the people that are involved in those things. This buildingSMART UK and Ireland chapter is very much about you guys. So there are different things we need to consider within the community, within the committee, sorry, membership, finances, relationship with buildingSMART International, engagement with the industry and other industries, and then the rooms and projects that are happening. Then we have a wider group, a steering group, who are active and engaged, and based on the feedback from the quiz we did earlier, it's looking good in terms of people that might be able to help at all of these different levels. Then we have industry and community contributors, people who are active, doing things for us and with us. And then we have a lot of the other industry, which I've called observers, and that's absolutely fine also. The more people we have out there as observers, the more people we can start to bring in through the various routes to being involved as part of buildingSMART UK and Ireland chapter. So this forum meeting is about assembling a community of people that will hopefully be growing over the forthcoming future to represent the UK at an international level and really drive forward our open BIM understanding, awareness, and capabilities and maturity. So what I'm going to do is introduce you to the buildingSMART UK and Ireland 4 Vs. This is work ongoing, but this is something I've just literally made up last week. I'd like this to be vast. I don't like the idea, and never have liked the idea that Open BIM and IFC is something you need to be a wizard to understand. So we need to make this vast and applicable to as many people as possible. I'd like to make it vibrant. I'd like to make it active. I'd like to make it enjoyable for people to be engaged in. And I'd like to make it vital, really relevant to what the UK and Ireland need in terms of our input and representation across all of our sectors to meet the UK BIM framework needs at various different stakeholder levels all the way through projects, and it absolutely needs to be valuable. It needs to be representing the UK, and the work we need to do needs to contribute not unnecessarily in certain areas, but we need to focus on delivering what we are setting out to deliver. In terms of making this vast, there's lots of different streams in terms of awareness, engagement, communication, and the commitment from both the committee, the steering group, and any people that are contributing in the industry to make others aware that Open BIM is a thing. It's there. It's very much gathering pace. And we need to encourage people to make it vibrant, and it needs to be, as I said, applicable. We are hopefully there to provide support and enthusiasm to get as many people involved and engaged as possible. Being vital, very much about being productive, meeting industry needs, having a voice, and being concise. As we said, we don't want to create lots of work unnecessarily for people. We want to find out what the challenges are and make them relevant to as many people as possible. And that's identified on the last point of being valuable. I'd very much like this to be not just for experts. It needs to be timely advice for anyone engaged in the BIM process, in the UK BIM framework, in delivering built environment projects right now. So targeted involvement, representing the UK and Ireland at international level that meets the needs of the UK right now. In terms of key people so far, you've met me. Later on, you'll meet Nick Nisbet, the Vice Chair, Emma Hooper, David Owens, and Alan Hoare. This might be new to them, but there are titles allocated within the buildingSMART International Roles database, and we are currently calling you guys business managers. But really, that's where we are at the moment. We need more people, please. We need more people to be engaged, more people to commit their time, help us to drive Open BIM into the UK and Ireland industry. As we speak, I've got people connecting with me on Twitter, on LinkedIn, saying they'd love to, and I'm really very happy with that. So it's filling me with enthusiasm at least. So in terms of activities, buildingSMART International have a number of different strands to what they do. First of all is standards, and you can see on the screen right now, this is just a screenshot from their website, but in terms of process, IFC, information delivery manuals, BIM collaboration format, model view definitions, and standards and resource libraries. They are very much in control of creating that, defining it with industry help from across the world, and that's the most important thing. There is so much work being input by various different people around the world. So I'm not going to go any more onto that, but also we mentioned rooms earlier, rooms and projects. buildingSMART has a series of rooms identified currently as airport, building, construction, infrastructure, product, railway, regulatory, and technical. We as a chapter, as the UK and Ireland chapter, have the ability to have a UK and Ireland representative for each of these rooms at international level. Nick may correct me later on, but as far as I'm aware, we don't have any dedicated one person, apart from maybe himself, Nick, dedicated to being our UK and Ireland representative in any of these places yet. We have lots of people keen, we have lots of people wanting to, but we do need to formalise that. We do need to let buildingSMART International know that they should be in the loop, they should get access to the materials. And it's through this and our membership and our growing, hopefully, committee we can start to, community, we can start to really drive the UK needs and desires through the UK chapter at international level. That's absolutely what we're looking to do. Later on, after Emma, Nick is going to be going through one of the infrastructure rooms and projects. So in terms of projects, you'll find out a little bit more about how those are operated, how they're run, how they're financed perhaps. But it is quite in depth. There is a lot of work going on in all of these rooms quite frequently. I'm not sure, well, I'm pretty sure that Richard Kelly won't mind me saying, at the moment, buildings International costs around about €2 million a year to run, to operate. So working with this many people around the world on all of these projects and in all of these rooms, it's a huge undertaking, and they always do need funding through membership. So I would urge any companies who are looking to be involved, who can spare the cash to be involved and contribute at that level, to do so, because that's absolutely what we need. That said, there are intricacies in the way we can represent the UK and Ireland in these rooms, and it doesn't necessarily involve a great big whacking financial contribution. It can be in kind and in time, so we will need to thoroughly understand that before we propose anyone representing the UK and Ireland in either of these rooms. But anyone who is interested, please drop me a line and we can start that discussion. Another thing, certification. For many years now, buildingSMART International has been the body that certifies organisations and creators of software for software certification. And you may have seen recently, they've launched the buildingSMART Professional Certification Programme, which is for individuals. So this is for understanding the training requirements to enable individuals to be identified as being proficient and experienced in a particular process. There are many more modules coming, depending on your role within a project. At the moment, it's more like an awareness. The first module is about awareness, about what BIM is and what it means, what Open BIM is. But it's there. The program is building, and we have Phil Reid representing the UK in terms of the buildingSMART UK and Ireland chapter lead, representing and doing great work in terms of driving forward our requirements and needs at the international level. So just be aware that that is happening, that's ongoing, and we are very much inputting our requirements and needs into the learning outcome framework and the modules that will follow later on. The future of IFC, anyone on the call who has been involved with IFC, understanding its development over the past and into the future. Leon van Berlo, the technical director at buildingSMART International, has or is currently drafting a document called Getting Ready for the Future, which I think should perhaps be called Preparing for the Future. But it does address many of the challenges that we're starting to see now and we have seen historically. It addresses the needs of those outside of our built environment industry needing to access our open data. It aims to increase the connectivity between domains, both in our industry and outside of it. It acknowledges the oncoming concepts of smart buildings, smart cities, and digital twins. It is aiming to remove bottlenecks and increase transparency and increase scalability. And more importantly than all this, as far as I'm concerned, it aims to lower the access threshold. So the knowledge you need to enable to involve yourself in open BIM within our industry, it will lower that threshold. It will hopefully be less technical. Things will happen in the background without you needing to be a coding expert or deeply understand the schema. So there is this massive need to make it more normal, and it is absolutely part of the technical roadmap for the future of IFC and all the other standards that sit alongside it and around it. So that's a quick introduction from me. If there are any questions, run through them in the chat. Pam, is there any questions coming from any of the attendees? Oh, we've got 92 so far. Excellent.
Hi, Casey. We have one question, and that is around the cost of membership for micro SMEs.
Yeah, well, to be a member of the buildingSMART UK and Ireland chapter, it's $0. We will always accept contributions to get us operating. In terms of the organisation, buildingSMART International organisational membership fees, they're all published on the website. So you can go to buildingSMART International website, go to membership. It will give you the same guide as standard multinational or strategic membership, and the cost is there based on the size of your organisation. Obviously, any money is welcome from the international or from the UK and Ireland chapter. We do need funds to operate. But yeah, it's a decision you need to make for yourselves and have that open discussion with buildingSMART International.
Okay, thank you. Next question. As a regulator, i.e. enforcing building regulations, is the regulatory room for me, or is that regulations around BIM standards only?
I would say yes, it is for you.
Okay.
I'm not fully aware of all the projects that go on within the regulatory room yet. I've only been vice chair of this for a few months. But yes, I know for a fact that there are discussions about building regulations going on within that room.
I'll talk about it in my session. I'll mention it. It's actually about real regulations, not standards compliance, BIM standards compliance.
Yeah, excellent.
Okay, can you talk about universities and how they can be engaged?
Yes, it's not something I've given particular thought to at the moment, so this is an answer off the top of my head. Absolutely, we'd love you involved. In terms of students, they are the future of our industry, but also as university organisations who normally have quite large research departments, all are welcome, is all I would say.
Can I add that I visit a number of universities to explain Open BIM and usually at the same time help those who are doing masters or other courses how they can use the IFC as a launch pad to accelerate their work. So invitations welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, as we were saying, with the future of IFC heading in that much more open BIM, this is not just for our industry. There are lots of other industries out there, lots of other new solution providers who aren't sometimes aware of it even existing. So they're all using their own structure of data without understanding that IFC exists. So it's not just within our industry and not just within our universities teaching the future of our industry, but other parts of the university as well.
Thank you. Another question. Sorry, I've just missed it. Will you be speaking about the possibilities of integrating design, GIS and point cloud data, and more specified regarding the use of native file formats next to IFC?
Well, Nick will be covering some infrastructure related things, which brings in a lot of the GIS related things. But other than that, specific discussions about IFC and native file formats and how we connect and all of those things will happen in those rooms. It's not, we absolutely do need representation from the UK and Ireland at those events in those rooms, but they are, I'd suggest that is probably one of the common discussions in each of the rooms. That's one that fills all of them, I think.
Okay, so some comments coming just to support or to help the universities question. It's worth noting that universities like Cardiff do a lot in the buildingSMART rooms, and it is a big focus of their engineering schools postgrad research. And also that at BSI level, there are lots of universities working on the development of IFC elsewhere in the world. Final question, if a business is already involved, are there benefits to individual employees to also sign up?
I'll answer that one first. Yes, there is. It just means you'll be on the mailing list and you'll get direct information to you. So absolutely do join. In relation to the UK and Ireland chapter, it's the same story. If you want to receive updates about new events and you rather receive them by email, just sign in, log in as a member, register as a member, and we will take your address and then use it for whatever goes out after that. In terms of the universities, yeah, fully agree. University of Cardiff working alongside Nick and Royal Haskellany DHV, working on the Ports and Harbours, Ports and Waterways project, extended the scheme to cover that as well. So yeah, fully appreciate all of the work that any universities are doing.
Okay, that's it. No more questions.
Okay, if there's no more questions, we will hand over to Emma, who's going to run through some Open BIM fundamentals.
Hello, everyone. Right, so since this is our first meeting, I wanted to go right back to the beginning and start with the most important subject of all, and that's information. And this presentation I'm going to give today is based on the one I gave at BIM Show Live. So apologies to those who've already seen it, but I think it's really important that we grasp the basics of this and understand its complexity before we can really appreciate why we need the buildingSMART standards. And also make sure you're logged into Slido using the bSUKI hashtag, as there's a couple of questions as well throughout the presentation. So hello, my name is Emma, and for my day job, I'm a digital information specialist at Bond Bryan Digital. As you've heard from Casey, I'm on the bSUKI committee, and I'm also BSI UK expert for ISO 16739, which is the standard for IFC. So I love information. I'm fascinated by the mechanics of it and the science behind it and how it all joins together to make patterns. And there's no bigger puzzle than the construction information. So in construction, we're all familiar with physical assets like a door, a brick, or even an entire building. And to make sure we get the right product, we specify what we want. The subject of information management is concerned with viewing the associated information as an asset in its own right and designing its structure, processes, and interoperability. And for me, because information underpins everything, it really is the one true asset to rule them all. I see buildings and infrastructure as huge containers of self-generating information, and that information is ever-changing. And as for projects, they're one big information ecosystem, which is made up of inputs, processes, and outputs. And the building blocks of this ecosystem is information. I like to think of information as a natural occurring phenomenon. It's everywhere and creates our reality, yet we can't access it until a human brain has processed it. Nowadays, we're constantly exposed to huge amounts of it, and as a consequence, we process a fair bit that we don't need and miss the bits that we do. It also makes us less appreciative of it. Information is cheap and we take it for granted. And this is no different to what happens in construction. So construction, or as I like to think of it, the tangled web of information chaos. There's two factors behind this. The first is the people-to-people exchange of information. Outdated procurement models and passing on risk has just increased the sheer amount of organisations involved on projects and the barriers and created convoluted lines of communication. And communication is the act of exchanging knowledge between people. When problems occur on projects, it's normally always to do with the breakdown of communication. However, I want to focus on this, the communication between technology. In this case, even at one simple exchange, we still have problems getting the right data out of one system and then into another. And as an industry, we have massive problems with interoperability. And as a result, we struggle to get our systems to work together. For this presentation, I want to focus on the mechanics of the information itself and how the way it is formed has just created this problem and how we can mitigate it. Over the years, every specialism or even sometimes company has become an information silo. They all have their own particular language, classifications and conventions. And this is developed ad hoc without consideration of the other silos and the overall bigger picture. And to join it up, that's where people come in, our ability to read between the lines, to interpret and to assume, but this introduces a whole chunk of risk. And you could kind of get away with this when projects are much more simpler. So to help us reduce this and make our projects more efficient, as an industry, we've moved towards technology to help us. But in simple terms, computers don't like unstructured, random and varied information across so many different scenarios. The whole premise of BIM is about making as much of our information as structured as possible in a consistent way so that technology can understand it. But this is easier said than done, because it's about converting the chaos into order. To do this, we need to remove the silos, bring the information together to see what we have, rationalize it and define what it is in accordance with logical rules, such as what the function of something is, rather than the varied nature of the English language or bad habits which have evolved over time. So let's think of some examples. What's the difference between a schedule, table and matrix? Why do we call it a design responsibility matrix and not a schedule? At handover, should we call this a building manual, O&M manual, health and safety file? And this seems to change with every project I work on. Why for shelves do we call it depth, but for a worktop we call it width? Is this a bulb or is it a lamp? What's the difference between a fixture or fitting? And we often use these terms interchangeably, because if you read the MBS website, they're actually defined by law, but with no definitive list, there is still confusion. And there seems to be no real agreement on what a left or right-handed door swing is. Architects and manufacturers use opposite terms. Our industry is full of this confusion and contradiction, and I dread to think how much time I've spent thinking about this stuff. This is why we need information standards more than ever. If we don't understand this, how can we expect technology to? The trouble is, it's like trying to put a jigsaw puzzle together, but using many different jigsaw puzzles, the overall picture becomes difficult to make out and the puzzle pieces don't fit. And if that wasn't enough, we also need to join the information up. And this is where we'll gain the real benefits, because it's the connections which give us insight and greater knowledge. And this will be key to everything we do in the future. What this will give us is a structured information layer for industry. And this is what we're trying to achieve now with all the standards we have, in which people and technology can operate from in the context of a project. And when projects are put together, we should think about this in the same way as the project framework. It needs to be considered at the start before any information is produced. The problem is this information layer is hidden and most don't know it exists. As humans, we relate to things far better if we can see them or if it's tangible, which is why when it comes to information, we think of the tools first above the information itself. But information is its own thing and doesn't rely on software applications to define it. They are just tools which help process it. And as a result, what we tend to see are requirements strategies built around the applications. But since these have developed around their own language and rules, they're proprietary, these two become mini information silos which struggle to share information between them. And this is why we have such problems with interoperability. Everything is using its own information layer, its own unique puzzle pieces. This is where we really need to make a decision on which path we go down as an industry. Do we all go off on our own and do option one? And this is where we define a project around a single application's information layer, that the information ecosystem becomes closed off from everything else. We force the supply chain into using one tool, which will only be adequate for a select number of activities, and you will always need that application to access the information. The facility will probably outlive the software tool, and there is no guarantee that the tool in the future will be able to open older data sets. But hey, it's easier in the short term. Or do we take option two, flip it around and change the way we currently think? The software should plug in and serve the information, not the other way around, allowing us to access information regardless of the software used. Therefore, we put the information layer first and open it up so it's freely accessible to anyone who wants to use it, resulting in one information layer which contains all the structures, rules and language to provide consistency across industry. So if you now want to vote on Slido, which option do you think we should follow? So do you think it should be option 1, an open information ecosystem? Oh, no, a closed information ecosystem for option 1, or option 2, an open information ecosystem? So I'll just give this a few moments. The numbers finished. Yeah, oh no, still going up. I almost feel like we need like the countdown clock on this. Okay, couple more seconds. Yeah, I think that's it. Okay, that's good. Option 2 it is, which is great, because that means we're all kind of, coming from the same sort of page. And I also think over the past few years, we've seen a lot more discussion around sort of the open BIM standards, especially IFC, which is great to hear. So, people are now starting to understand why we need it, which is great. So what's in this information layer? We're going to concentrate on 3 areas: the breakdown of the information into its component parts, and also taxonomy, grouping and ordering of the information, and ontology. This presentation, I'm going to talk about it in the sense of joining it up and adding additional information. So it's not a true ontology because the semantic connections are not there, but it's a start. So the breakdown of information. I want to be clear, this is something I've come up with to help distinguish it better. It's not standard. So if we take a single piece of information and analyse it, it can be described using these facets. So its format, how it's transported either physically or digitally, its form, how it's packaged up and communicated to us, its function, and this is such an important facet, it's one we're not great at defining. What is the purpose for that content? And the content. This is what imparts the knowledge and tells you what you need to know, from the words in a report to the lines on a drawing or the 3D content in a model. For models, this contains hierarchies of objects which themselves contain content, geometrical and alphanumerical data all linked by relationships. Defining the extent or the detail of this content is where the majority of the complexity lies, and this is what the level of information need framework in ISO 19650 helps to do. When we specify information requirements, we're in fact asking for information across these facets. So for example, a client might say, I want a site survey in PDF format, or it might be more detailed. I want a site survey drawing and report in PDF format, which covers roads in a 3-mile radius, nearby watercourses, and concentrates on the boundary lines. Neither of these is wrong. You only specify what you need to. It's then down to the delivery team to fill in any blanks and provide the actual information to fulfill that requirement. The thing to remember is keep it simple and only ask for what you need to fulfill your own purposes. And more specifically for specifying structured information, the complexity here is defining the object structure. Once you have this, you can define the extent of the geometry and the attributes and properties required. So you must almost have layers within facets. And this is what we're having trouble with as an industry, working out how to actually define this and how we communicate it. Without having a starting point for this, which is the same across industry, the permutations are infinite. If I asked everyone watching to give me a list of building elements, they would all be different. We would name them differently and order them differently. And then if you add in attributes and properties, we would have many different sets of information. How can we deliver projects around this? And how can technology possibly understand it? So simply saying I want BIM does nothing to say what information is actually required. And when we refer to information, we generally mix these facets up because they can be difficult to distinguish, and the way we view information is subjective. It's based on our training, environment, and discipline. We also use different information languages, and we all want to access information from different starting points. So taking this into account, and these naming conundrums from earlier, we need something to provide order to define what the facet and object hierarchies are, and also provide the descriptions which everyone in industry can use. One unified language which does the grouping for us to help improve communication for people and technology. This is why we need well-defined classification in industry. This is basically objects or things arranged by similar themes and concepts, which can become progressively more granular as we and they also could be arranged in lists. And one of the most well-known ones is the Dewey Decimal System used in libraries. An overall classification structure, which is defined across the whole AEC and FM industry, is critical to the information layer to provide a consistent language and structure from building type through to spaces, right down to products and across the facets. It also starts to provide order to all this sheer amount of stuff. And it's kind of like the basic building blocks of information management. Without it, we have the problem we have at the moment. We have too many of these lists, or we just create bespoke ones each time, bring them together, and they're structured in completely different ways. But we can just map them, can't we? Well, having done this, I really think it just introduces risk, as there's different outcomes. So you have one-to-one mapping. Well, this is great, but it's rare. And then there is one-to-many or many-to-one, which need a human to make a decision, so this can't be automated, or no mapping at all, which is where things slip through the net. Or if we zoom in, because the two lists are at different levels of granularity, you're never comparing apples with apples, so the mapping is unlikely to be correct anyway. In the short term, I'd rather see time invested in creating one robust system to give us that overarching structure. Having all these lists is great, but we need to go further. Our information is also extremely interrelated. An instance of a pump is associated with the space and pump type. The space is located on a building story and may also be part of a zone. The story is part of a facility and that sits on a site. The pump will be part of a system, have detailed classification assigned to it, and also be referenced in documents. It will have basic information like a name, description, and ID, and properties like pressure. It might also have risk associated with it. And that's just one pump. Now think of everything else which makes up a facility and how everything interlinks. These links or relationships are so important, and when we don't recognise these, we miss out on so much more useful information, which can make our projects perform so much better. The concept I've described in information science terms is similar to an ontology, nodes connected to others via relationships, and you're going to hear this term a lot more in the future. And I think of it as the digital heart of the information layer and what it's all about. Get all this right, and we have a sound basis to convert the chaos into order, logic, and repeatable patterns to really get the best out of our technology. So, do we have something for this already? The answer is yes. It's called Industry Foundation Classes, and I think it's one of the most misunderstood aspects of digital construction. Some people will think, well, it's just a file format, what's so special about it? And others might think it's a dumb 3D model that you can't do anything with. And I'll be honest, I remember thinking like this once upon a time. So I want to explain what it actually is. And if you remember one thing about IFC, it should be this. It's not a file format. It's instead a data structure, a digital representation of a built asset. It's like a map which lists building elements, their properties, and the connections. We actually call this map a schema. This is represented by the blue circle. It contains 4 important parts: entities, attributes, basic properties, which all link via relationships. And because it can't predefine everything, there is the option to add custom properties. It provides a data architecture for several formats, the 2 main ones being STEP, which is what we think of as IFC, and XML, with these other modern formats in development. And RDF, XML, and Turtle are particularly exciting as these are the formats for linked semantic data, where the relationships are basically on steroids, meaning you can gain so much more useful information from querying the data. When 2 applications can read IFC, it improves interoperability. The receiving platform knows where to look for the data it needs and what the relationships are, so it too can make sense of it. This allows us to automate tasks such as checking, analysing large data sets, and carrying out predictions across the whole project. Even if you have platforms that claim to open every file format under the sun, how do they know where to find specific data and what relationships are to start to make sense of it? To get around this, we end up creating peer-to-peer bespoke mapping between each one, resulting in endless permutations. And of course, software is constantly being updated, so the mappings may keep changing. And the IFC schema is huge. Therefore, it can't be can't all be implemented with software. So we exchange IFC models, we'll create them in line with the rules of one of these mini schema. These are some of the official buildingSMART MBDs, and note COBE is one of them. So all this is well and good, but how does IFC fit into real life projects? In ISO 19650, we have the project's information standard, and this is where it should be stated that IFC will be used on a project as that consistent information layer. Starting with a purpose, an exchange information requirement is defined. And this could be, for an example, asset management, planning construction works, or costing. The pieces of information which are needed to fulfill these purposes are specified across the different facets by the level of information need framework, which breaks the information down into its component parts. We also need to use classification to give order and a consistent language to the lists of object hierarchies. And for this, IFC can be used as a starting point. The information required will be a mixture of structured and unstructured information. And for the structured information, the model view definition needs to be stated. This is so that the delivered information will be put together in the right way in accordance with the schema rules. Think of the EIR as a multi-dimensional shopping list for information. These requirements are handed over or exchanged to those who will deliver the actual information. It's now the turn of the delivery side to work out how they're going to provide it in terms of the who, when, and how. A big part of this is looking at the layers of information from a container perspective and the strategy around this, taking into account responsibility, program, and software. They'll produce unstructured and structured information deliverables, including IFC models in accordance with the correct MBD, which contains only the relevant information as per the EIR. This is issued back to complete the information exchange, where it's checked against the original requirements. And because the original requirements were defined using IFC and some of the delivered information is received using IFC, this information is much easier to check. Basically, whenever you're dealing with structured information, IFC can be used so all processes use the same consistent information layer throughout, from defining information requirements, planning information delivery, the delivery itself, and very importantly, checking. So at Bond Bryan Digital, we use IFC for all information management activities to maintain that golden thread. The more we can control and standardise the information, the more it can be checked in a more automated and intelligent way against the uses defined in the information requirements. So in essence, the EIR states which bits of the information are required using the level of information need framework in accordance with IFC. The MBD provides the relevant data structure to exchange and deliver the information using software. This means we're only ever exchanging the relevant information, which also helps with security, usability, and keeps model sizes down. So the information layer will evolve. IFC is starting to go through a process of modernisation, and in the future will make more use of proper ontologies, linked data, knowledge graphs, and semantic web, where these external data sources can all connect together. And this is the stuff that really excites me. This is where the concepts of the digital twin and smart cities come into play. And this is why I believe this information layer is very much lays the groundwork for the connected future. So I truly believe if we all work together to make IFC the best it can be, and when we do get it right, the majority of industry won't even know they're using it. So to end with, if we go back into Slido for question. So what do you think is the biggest barrier in adopting IFC on projects? You can pick up to 3 answers for this. So I think there's a lack of understanding as to why it's needed. Don't know where to start. There's not enough guidance. The subject is just too complex. There's not enough software guidance. Software doesn't implement it very well, or there's no drive from clients. So I'll just give you a little bit longer to complete this. I'm really interested to see which one's going to come out on top on this. Okay, I'll give you a few more seconds. I think that's everyone. Okay. Yeah, lack of understanding to why it's needed. Okay, that's interesting. But this is really helpful actually for planning future events, so we kind of know where to target presentations and guidance and anything we can do to kind of help industry in the future. And if anybody has any other topics which they would like further guidance on, please add the suggestions to the webinar chat box. So that's me done on this presentation. And I will be now handing over to Nick.
Well, does anyone have any questions for Emma?
There doesn't seem to be any on the system. Oh, hang on.
Okay.
Just double check. No, there doesn't seem to be.
Okay, well, I'd like to pick up from Emma's presentation. I think she made the case for IFC overall, and I think there's a strong case for IFC from society's perspective, not just from a business perspective. What I'm going to talk about now is the work that's been going on to extend IFC into the realm of infrastructure. And you'll forgive my little joke that infrastructure includes IFC. What I want to talk about is the process where the IFC standard has been extended. And even if you're not, your main activity isn't infrastructure, I hope you'll find something interesting in the process, because IFC is not a given. It's created by the interests and inputs of people who get involved. And it may be that there are projects and extensions and usages that you would like to see the IFC cover. And on our way through, I'll mention some of the things that it does already cover that you may not know about as we go along. So I'll talk about the process and a bit about the outcomes and a little bit about the future. But I hope the future is that you will want to get involved with these processes. So let me just see how this works. Nice. Good. Okay, I'm going to show 4 or 5 slides about the process that buildingSMART has put in place. This process is evolving, and over the years, and from being relatively informal 25 years ago, it's now got a discipline to it, which means that it's recognized by ISO. So when there's a major revision to IFC, ISO recognizes it as being properly conducted. And it means that there are some formal steps that projects have to go through. But it all starts with needs and requirements. And these are voiced really from 2-3 places. From chapters. Individual chapters have always been able to propose needs or challenge issues or whatever, and get that discussed. There's also sometimes some third parties looking for larger integration. Interesting discussion with Siemens last year, where they said that they wanted to support the Internet of Things, and they found that the IFC already did it. But the main process of developing the standards happens through the rooms. The rooms are discussion forums. There's a buildingSMART forum you can join, and each of the rooms has an area. They meet physically twice a year when that's practical. And most of the rooms have an online process as well. And you saw the different themes. Today, in this course, in this session, I'll be talking mainly about the rail room and the infrastructure room. But I'd like you to envisage how you would want to engage with some of the other rooms as well as we go through this. If in the course of those room discussions, and that can include software demonstrations, arguments, debates, and so on, there will come up a proposal for a new working group or a new project, and that is then put forward to a standards committee executive to make sure that it's a sensible, rational, valid proposal, likely to produce good results. It doesn't have to be changes to the IFC. It can result in a report, or sometimes it can just lead to further more specific proposals. The Standards Committee Executive and the Standards Committee is there to make sure that all the different project work that's happening within IFC, within buildingSMART is coherent, and that we don't get multiple groups addressing the same issue. So we definitely have project plans. And as an example, at the moment, we're going through a process of initiating proposals for landscape extensions to IFC. That might appear one day as IFC 4x5. That's speculation. So, and the building room is leading that. And if there's anyone on the call who thinks that some of the problems that we see in building coordination also apply to the exterior of buildings and landscape development in general, then there is a group of people waiting to hear from you to take the project forward. But if that project gets approval, it will proceed to the next stage, past initiation, to a development stage. And then there will be debate or need for resources. But the development stage is about preparing requirements and expectations and putting those out to expert panel reviews. But once a month, there's an expert panel review from one or other of the projects. And that's a chance for anyone who can, well, anyone who's on the buildingSMART media range to join in and contribute to and assess whether the proposals or development are sound in terms of technical and commercial potential. And then that development phase goes through further reviews and specific proposals are developed. And then at the end of the process, the aim is to produce a candidate standard. Might be changes or extensions to the IFC. It might be a new MVD. And as I say, it might be a report or whatever. And as an example, again, I don't know if it'll come out as IFC 4x4, but the tunnel project was a slow starter compared with the other infrastructure projects. And that's currently underway. And I think an expert panel for requirements is happening early next month. So that development stage can be very intense. The quality of it really depends on making sure that you have a wide number of stakeholders, either client bodies or technical bodies or expert in the field, to make sure that there is a good connection between the requirements and the proposed changes. The next stage is the approval stage. And this is a public consultation process. And it's what the IFC for infrastructure, the bulk of it, IFC 4x3, is just about to enter. And that's got the scope of road, rails, ports and waterways. And it includes some general stuff like geotechnical, earthworks, and kinematics as well. We'd hoped that this would be out before the Oslo meeting. The Oslo meeting was cancelled from the end of March. So it's now expected to be released when the Standards Committee Executive has endorsed it in about 2 weeks' time. So this will be a candidate standard, and it'll be accessible on the buildingSMART websites, and there'll be a discussion forum set up so that anyone can ask questions or comment on it, and so on. That process is expected to take most of this year. There'll be expert panel presentations on different aspects, and if the process is successful, and we intended it should be, that by the end of the year it'll become a BSI final standard. It'll be approved, and it'll become the preferred implementation for software developers. And then you get to the next stage, which is the implementation stage. Now, some vendors engage during the approval stage, some vendors engage only after approval, and some lag behind considerably. But we are hopeful that we've got most of the big vendors now actively engaged in the implementers support group and engaging in looking at the IFC for infrastructure. Currently, IFC 4X2, which covers bridges and included improvements, alignment, geolocation, and the option for product libraries, is currently being implemented by vendors. After some initial feedback of implementation problems with some new geometry, that's been going quite well now. Last stage is in use. As I say, some vendors come in late, only react to user pressure. And that's obviously a thing that you as a community can speak up and say, what do you want IFC to do for you? But with the in-use stage, many of you will be aware of IFC 2X3, which has been the current implementation standard probably for over a decade. And then recently IFC 4, which introduced some support for infrastructure and cities and a few other bits and pieces. And those are the ones that most people are using at the moment. I've included a diagram that emphasizes that the IFC really represents 3 different things. I've mentioned it as site, building, and project. Site all the way down to the spaces, that actually what makes the built environment important and different from mechanical engineering is that we care about the spaces. That we interact with the built environment, we care about the built environment, we think and experience the built environment through the spaces, indoor and outdoor. Fairly obviously, there's the physical aspects of the built environment, starting with a building and ending up with different physical elements. And the third aspect is that we always have a project, either in use or transformative, made up of tasks and so on. And this is the third aspect of the IFC that is there waiting to be used, particularly for construction stage, where there's a strong interaction between the process steps and the physical steps and the spatial aspects of the site. And that's an area where, with 4D planning and these kind of activities, I expect to see much more use of that aspect. So that's the process. It does take time, but a large part of that time is making sure that we have the engagement of the stakeholders and give people time to react at each stage to make sure that there are plenty of checks and balances in the system. Okay. Just to emphasize that previous diagram, I'd actually put in a fourth one here, and I was not going to linger on this, but the fourth aspect of the IFC, alongside projects, facilities, and sites, is its ability to handle criteria. And Celebri and AAC3, my company, have pioneered the use of this to capture building regulations, client requirements, all sorts of recommendations and so on. And just as with the other aspects, criteria in the end boil down to objectives and metrics, which you can describe. So the future of the IFC will include the demand side as well as the solution side of what we're trying to do. The middle there, which I haven't spoken about, is really the tools and concepts we use to manage things like zones and systems and goals, work packages, task specifications, method statements, whatever they happen to be, and the things that we classify to make those things manageable. Okay, now going back to infrastructure, if I may. We started on the basis of IFC4, and the first extensions coming up from the bottom was the development of an alignment representation, particularly obviously linear infrastructure, whether it's road or rail, or indeed breakwaters and things in harbours. A lot of these things are based not on grids, as we would understand it in building terms, but on alignment curves. And so that was added in early on as a basis for then the separate projects, which kicked off. We knew we'd have rail, road, bridge, tunnel, and maritime, ports and harbours, or ports and waterways. And from those, we identified that those extensions would all need some common definitions, earthworks, geotechnical, and a few other things, vehicles and kinematics and so on, And each of the projects had a second work package, which was requirements, and a third work package, which was developing the responses to those requirements. As it happened, Bridge came out first, and that's available for inspection and implementation in software. Rail was heavily subscribed by a large number of client bodies, starting with China Rail, but including most of the European rail networks, and to our shame and regret, no involvement from UK. And so that actually became a separate room and a separate project. Road, and maritime, bridge and tunnel fell into the main infrastructure projects, but each one is configured the same way with 2, 3, 4 leading sponsors who are contributing not only money, or not always money, but also time and expertise, and sharing with the community what makes those different disciplines specific. What makes them interesting. So, as I say, each had a work package. I'm going to show you some of the requirements, use cases from the ports and waterways. Ports and waterways turned out to be quite challenging because they are industrial facilities. So it took us beyond looking at buildings, although there are many buildings on a port or harbour site, into whole complexes. And of course, a major part of those complexes is road and rail access and networks. So there are some use cases that are pretty much in common with those that we know from building, like coordination and collision detection, federation of engineering models. But we also took the chance to look at master planning and started to think about how IFC could be used to represent capacity and the modeling of existing facilities in order to simulate the effectiveness of a particular master plan. As I say, geotechnical design and analysis, probably not the best words, but we certainly want to share the interpretation of geotechnical information and landforms, and also make sure that the implications of that geotechnical interpretations are shared for other members of the team. And in the face of some surprise from the geotechnical community, I had to point out that if they would insist on drilling boreholes all over the site, we should at least make sure the construction team didn't fall down them. So we made the case for quite a lot of sharing of that information. Logistics plannings, the whole new generation of container ports and bulk carrier ports being rolled out around the world, and the effectiveness and the avoidance of constrictions is a major part of the planning operation. And of course, ports and harbours in particular, but airports too, there are dynamic structures, lock gates, pontoons, floating docks, and so on. And vehicles and cargo become a major consideration, and the fit between vehicles and the physical infrastructure. So each of the infrastructure domains will have looked at these in one way or another. Oh, a couple more, sorry. Capacity analysis I've mentioned. Energy and emissions analysis, I think the cost profile is now being complemented by energy and environmental considerations. Some things which we've been used to in building for a while, but haven't always been critical criteria in the infrastructure sector. And two specific ones: mooring analysis, the interaction between the physical infrastructure, the vessels, and the tides and winds affecting it, and another navigational criteria. So some use cases were common across all the infrastructure projects. I've highlighted a few that are also a little bit interesting from there. The other big challenge has been to take the ideas of the spatial and physical requirements and extend them so that, whereas in the past IFC talked about buildings made up of building stories, made up of spaces, make sure that we got the right equivalences for the different, for road, for rail, and for ports and harbours. And here you can just make out the blue zone here is a, you can actually just see two container ships, and the rest is of the equipment and the zones used for storing containers and moving them. And there's a small note over on the right, which you won't be able to read, but I'll just say, it just says that the gatehouse is actually very often the limiting factor on the capacity of a harbour. And so that's why the capacity planning becomes important, to make sure that all the different stages that the cargo goes through are in balance. And that's what this diagram's about. I won't linger on that. The other thing, we want to be able to not just simulate the capacity, but also populate in this case, the terminal operating system, the software that actually runs the asset as a whole. So we've got an evolving content. I've got the different IFC schemas across down the left-hand side, and the criteria, spatial, physical, and process aspects, and a few other additions. And I've speculated what might come out in 4x4 and 4x5. So it's going into a little bit more detail about 4x3. I just thought I'd list out the special elements that are needed for earthworks, geotechnical, and others. Down in the right-hand corner, you can see a rather innocent-looking thing saying plant. That's the vegetable plant, not the mechanical plant. And so without waiting for the landscape, we've started to implement some of the elements we will need. Also, other things in common like signs and signals, which are common across all the infrastructure projects. And then this might be quite surprising. For the 3 projects that are delivering in IFC 4x3, for road, the only specific item that they needed was something to replace IFC building at the top level, which we call road, and the idea of a curb, which wasn't present in the physical objects available in IFC. For rail, similarly, we needed to introduce the idea of a railway instead of a building. A lot of stuff about the special alignment curves that go underpin railways, which are more complicated than those on roads. And then just a handful of new objects in each of the other sectors to physically. Now, many of the existing IFC objects are being extended, things like zone, fixing, and so on and so forth. And many of the elements that you may have thought of as being building elements have been rechristened built elements to make them palatable for the infrastructure sector. Okay, other things we're introducing, property sets. Property sets are the most flexible part of the IFC schema. And in many cases, if you can identify the right properties to attach to objects, you can support new use cases very quickly. And this is just one example, maintenance planning based on system criticality and frailty on the left, and then identifying the monitoring method. Well, given the priority from the criticality and frailty, you can then choose the appropriate monitoring method, Internet of Things, sensors, PPM, inspection or feedback, and then the triggered actions. And so we're starting to introduce common tools for the industry to use to convey, document, design, develop, and convey aspects, whether it's capacity planning, maintenance planning, or whatever. Apologies. Okay, so just to summarize, 4x3, which is the one that's just about to go out for public consultation as a candidate standard, delivers road, rail, ports and waterways and bridge. It delivers geotechnics, earthworks, alignment curves. Because of, we have process analysis and maintenance analysis. We have geometric uncertainty. The geotechnic community wants to convey their information. Well, when they do want to convey their information, they want it to be tagged with its uncertainty. Existing site information should be tagged with its uncertainty too. And we're expecting to follow tunnel, probably coming on for public consultation as a candidate standard by the end of the year, and landscape, if it gets the support from the community, in 2021. So that's a couple of stories about how the IFC develops. We could tell similar stories from the airport room, the construction room, or indeed the regulatory room. But I hope that gives some, first of all, confidence that the IFC method works, and secondly, that IFC is developing to cover the built environment to be the preferred technical schema for the built environment. Of course, we will increasingly be linking to other systems at other scales, like smart cities and so on. But I think the IFC is probably, for the foreseeable future, the key schema for the industry to actually get the efficiencies that and quality that it notoriously has lacked. Okay, so I'll ask if there are any questions or comments, and pause to hear if anyone who's interested in any of the aspects that we've highlighted on the way through.
So Nick, we have one question. Will the master planning design use case potentially filter out of the infrastructure room and cross-pollinate into cities and urban realm with IFC?
Yes, I think the disciplines that the IFC techniques and property sets and ways of representing things can have a role in other sectors. I think the process we're going through is very applicable, and I think one of the things that the IFC does is, for example, it treats or it includes in its representation of buildings and infrastructure systems and zones. And these are the things that need to be exposed at the city level. Smart cities don't really care about what spaces a building has. It doesn't care what equipment is in the building. What it cares about is what zones and what systems are there, as you can see in the conversion of the Excel and so on. So I think the ideas that are being captured here do have a wider role, certainly.
Okay, so we don't have any more questions coming up through the question tab for you, Nick, but I have a couple of ones that followed on from Emma's presentation earlier, so it may be ones that you could answer, or maybe Emma can, if you want me to go through those. There are three that came through. One is thinking about Grenfell and the bad behaviours we have known to go on. We see the players pointing at some confusing sets of information as mitigation. Do you agree structured information closes the doors to these excuses and will promote safer behaviours?
Yes, I'll take that one. Yes, definitely, because having that consistent language throughout, and that sort, data sets are black and white at the end of the day, and you can't really argue with them. It allows the data to be checked. It allows it to go through a journey, a consistent journey. So yeah, because at the moment our information is just all over the place. It's just random, really. I mean, half the time we only get it just by chance. We don't follow set cycles. We don't follow the same sort of set ways of creating it. I really wonder half the time how we actually build things with it, but we manage to get through. But it's not gonna cut it in the future, and we've seen from Grenfell that poor information can have dramatic results, and we need to start understanding it more and its importance. So yeah.
I think if you take the point of view of the new fire safety agencies who will be taking on these responsibilities, in year one, they'll be responsible for something like 3,000 buildings, existing buildings. They'll then be taking on everything that's built new, and everyone expects the number of building types that they're responsible for to grow very rapidly, not just high-rise residential. So we have a situation where a huge workload is going to be channeled through an organization. The only way that's going to be possible is if the conversation is built around shareable, structured information. I'm sure a lot of other interests will come forward offering other solutions, but if you think about the society's interest in buildings and infrastructure, it's pretty clear that the conversation is going to have to be around IFC.
Okay, so I've just noticed we've had a fair few questions coming through Slido. So I'm going to run through those now as well, if that's okay. Before that, there was a comment somebody made. It is important to note clients can't update IFC files, so at project handover, the native file formats are still a requirement. Another question through the system was, if IFC isn't a file format, why is the file extension .ifc? I don't know if you want to answer that one.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, do you want to answer it, Nick, or do you want me to?
well, you know, the extension is to identify a certain physical file format which contains schema. If it was .ifc XML, you would be not surprised to find that it contains the same information, but in an XML-based thing. And if it's IFC JSON, you wouldn't be surprised that it contains JSON information.
Okay.
I think one of the issues is that we just ever see just .ifc, and that's what a lot of the programs actually show. Whereas actually it's actually .spf IFC really, because it's a step file that contains IFC information. You know, all the time people just say, right, IFC format, and they don't actually understand that actually it's the contents of it, that's data structure that's the important bit. It's not just 3 letters at the end of a file.
Okay, so if I run through some of these questions that have come through. So are BSI or bSUKI, buildingSMART UK and Ireland, looking at business accreditation scheme for ISO 19650, which is recognised by UCAS? I don't know whether Casey wants to take that one or...
Yeah, I can answer that one. So I think that's probably 2 questions in one. In terms of the individual certification that buildingSMART International is running, buildingSMART UK and Ireland will be a contact point for any training organisation that wants to become certified to their learning outcome framework. So there's more to come on that later in another session, because it's still ongoing. In terms of being accredited to UK education bodies such as UCAS, yes, it is exactly happening. So Phil Reed is the one engaging with the current certification bodies and accreditation bodies, and they are very much on board in terms of providing input that will then flow, or does already flow, back up to buildingSMART International for their consideration.
Okay.
As for bSUKI becoming an accreditor, no, we won't be. Well, never say never, but there are no plans at the moment.
Thanks, Casey. Emma, this one's for you. Why do you think the 9% that voted earlier as part of your presentation think there should be a closed system?
One of the reasons could be related back to that other question you just asked earlier about clients needing native models at handover to be able to edit them. And this is one area, it's my biggest bugbear. And I think it's one of the topics that I'd like buildingSMART UK and Ireland to look at, is the handover of information and why we need to use design intent tools after, you know, for FM and operations. At the moment, I think there's a huge gap in the market for a tool which can actually use IFC in terms of design transfer, but also link to, sort of FM databases, and also sort of understanding what clients need to use that model for. Why do they need to edit it? Do they need to edit the whole thing, or is it just, sort of spatial? Is it just moving around furniture? Is it maybe moving a few partitions? I think we need to gain a greater understanding really about how these models are being used in the in-use phase to really kind of work out a solution around this. As I think that's kind of the biggest driver why clients are asking for particular software to be used on projects, which we're seeing more and more at the moment, which obviously restricts people in terms of what they can use, because certain tools are good for certain jobs, but not everything, unfortunately. There's not one tool that rules them all. So that's why I think that 9% is there.
And I think that there are tools that are better and tools that are worse at importing IFC, and there are tools that use IFC as their fundamental format. There's probably an education aspect to the question too.
Yeah, I'll just add to what Emma was saying as well. I do have in my diary a series of meetings with various individuals from the asset management and facility maintenance side of things. So they are very much on board and looking to benefit from what it is we're all trying to do as an industry.
Okay, so a few more questions around IFC. How does it relate to UniClass 2015?
So in IFC, what you can do, because obviously you've got the main sort of structure of the objects, and one of those objects is classification. So you can actually link it to external classification systems to actually add a bit more granularity. And that's kind of where that link is between IFC and UniClass. So I kind of see IFC as the main sort of, the master sort of schema, how everything's related to each other, how objects are structured. And then we have external classifications like UniClass, which is the UK implementation of ISO 12006 Part 2. And that kind of, plugs into it. So yeah, just to add that, more detail.
Okay, get quite a few questions. As the issue is that IFC is a text-based file format, it can be edited within any text editor. How will IFC deal with data security to stop anybody editing it?
Well, the CDE is secure. That's one of the ideas. I think the other thing about an IFC, you can zip it and put a password on it, and it's still readable. Many of the tools will accept IFC zip. I think the importance of it being a text format in step physical format or XML or JSON is that it can cross barriers between different machines and different system architectures and so on. Binary formats don't always offer that security. And the whole step physical file format was invented to create data that could last 200 years. One of the drivers was the idea that information about nuclear facilities should not be embedded in a format that became inaccessible. And in fact, given an IFC file and a handful of other text files, you can reboot an application from nothing. So it has that long-term security, which clients are looking for, which society is looking for.
Thank you. Just going to hand over to Casey for a few more slides.
Right, okay. We're going to carry on. We've got 9 minutes left. There are just a couple more slides. But first of all, thank you very much to Emma and Nick for keeping to time and filling everything up. We are probably going to finish just on time. there are another 20 odd or so questions. I'm okay staying on for a little while to answer those afterwards. If my co-speakers are as well, then we'll stay and answer those questions. But for now, what I'd like to do is just follow through in some summary and closing slides. Many of you will have seen this joint statement already, that the UK BIM framework, formed of the UK BIM Alliance, CDBB and BSI, are committed to a coordinated approach to creating and communicating an international wrapper for UK BIM, ensuring a smooth transition in the integration of ISO 19650 Part 1 and 2 within our suite. Collectively, we will develop and champion one single set of guidance in a clear, concise manner to support industry understanding and message how to make industry understanding and message how to make the shift without confusion. Now, quite wordy, I understand, but buildingSMART UK and Ireland are very much part of that chapter as part of UK BIM Alliance. So we do need to make sure that this journey is, we have that international voice. And what I was quite happy to see is the results of the Slido poll, that basically people are there willing to be engaged, aren't yet currently either registered as a member, haven't been to various rooms or engaged in projects, but want to. It's really encouraging. And as I said before, whilst Emma and Nick were presenting, I've been checking all the messages that have been coming through on LinkedIn, on Twitter direct messages and emails. And I think we have around 7 or 8 people already who want to be actively engaged in buildingSMART UK and Ireland. So really, really happy to see that. And we will be in touch with you after this session during this week to gather that feedback. But one last thing for people on the call, and I really would like you to do this, and there's still 75 people on the call, is to again, scan the QR code on the screen or go to the address that is shown on the screen right now. It's a slightly longer form. There's 10 questions, but this is where we're starting to gather people who realistically, actively want to be engaged in this new, vibrant, larger community, to start to give and provide that voice. So for those of you that have got in touch with me via all the other means, if you could populate this form, it goes into the database and we can start to deal with it from that point of view. It makes things a lot easier for us. So if you can do that as soon as you can, ideally now, whilst you're on the call, that makes it really quite useful for us. I'm just going to skip back, or sorry, ahead to the last slide, and then I'll go back to that one. buildingSMART UK and Ireland, very much as part of the UK BIM Alliance. Email address is there, Twitter account is there, and you'll notice the tweets that have been going out during these 2 hours. We will probably end up with a channel on the UK BIM Alliance Slack group to talk specifically about bSUKI related items. And also we need help with the wider steering group and the community to create some dedicated pages on the UK BIM Alliance website. There's a lot of resources that have historically been created by buildingSMART UK and Ireland that we need to port over and have there as a resource to basically hold all the information and the great work that's gone ahead prior to me, sorry. On that note, I'd like to thank David Glennon for his hard work and efforts as my predecessor. Very much looking forward to working with anyone on the call and anyone in the community that wants to be involved and engaged. So thank you all once again. As I said, to go through a 2-hour webinar and still have 74 people on the call, quite an achievement, I think, in the first one. So please do be honest in your feedback. We've asked for feedback on this session, this assemble session, and we look forward to seeing you in the next session, which we hope to hold in the next quarter. So thank you very much. Please fill in the forms. If anyone wants to stay online and hear the answers to the questions, I'm okay doing that. I think Pam is also okay reading the rest of the questions. Yeah. And hopefully my co-speakers can all chip in as well.
Okay. So we have, let me start on the slide I want. Have CDBB decided to use IFC, or has the Turing Institute gone off to reinvent the wheel for the National Digital Twin Framework?
Well,
That also, sorry, hang on. That also links with another question about the interrelationship between BSI and CDB with regards to IFC and digital twins as well.
Okay.
So there's two similar questions.
Well, a
Okay,
digital twin.
So go on, Nick.
Well, a digital twin is going to need to use something very similar to the IFC schema. The national digital twin is a very different thing. A national digital twin is the ability to dip into such digital twins as different industries or companies choose to create and share with the government in order to optimize things like power consumption or whatever. So the national digital twin is not going to hold any information whatsoever. It is going to be a set of methods for accessing that information. And there is still a debate about whether it needs a schema to do that, or whether it will be able to accommodate multiple schemas. For example, oil and gas uses something different, and process plant uses something different. So be very careful to distinguish between the national digital twin and any individual digital twin. I don't think there's anything, a digital twin will be IFC, in short, or something so similar to it that it's not worth discussing. So be very careful about the distinction.
Okay. Will IFC 4x3 development include guidance on how to map into industry guidance, i.e. highway specification for design, construction and handover requirements?
Well, IFC 4x3 is an international standard. It will be implemented by vendors, including vendors developing software in the UK. We are about to embark on an exercise to show that the Highways Agency design requirements can be checked against IFC 4x3 models systematically and cost effectively, etc., etc. And if there is a degree of interpretation needed or a set of UK extensions or implementation guidance, then those have to be written in the UK, and the buildingSMART UK&I is the forum to bring together knowledge about the IFC and knowledge about specific domains to help with that. If it's for one single organization, however, then it would cross into the area of a consultancy question.
Okay. Sorry, Nick. Will there be example IFC models for infrastructure developed and shared with industry?
Yes. There are already examples for the bridges, and road, rail, and ports and harbours are in preparation.
Okay, great. Spotting work packages on the side, how will these be defined and aligned to classifications, etc., as well as existing old processes?
Oh, that's one for me. Work packages are usually the choice of the contractor, or in operation of the client. They exist. They're created. They're used to manage a set of tasks. What classification codes you assign to them is entirely up to the community that's going to be using that information, which would be typically a contractor and his subcontractors. One of the strengths of the IFC, it separates the idea of things that exist, like a work package, and the decision as to how to classify them.
Okay, thank you. It's a lot of questions. For highways, all the handover information requirements include very detailed quality records of elements as part of maintenance. How will all this be aligned?
Well, it's the same answer again, that if we want to work that out, let's work it out. I think the first point is that the IFC offers the best way of holding the information in a meaningful form. If the current requirements include requests for PDFs, then the decision is: do we create all those PDFs separately, or do we derive them from the model? Or do we quietly let that obligation transform into give me the data in a international reusable format?
Okay, thank you.
So if I may, Pam, if I may.
Of course.
Anne Kemp speaking, so chair of the UK BIM Alliance, and obviously heavily involved with developing the guidance, along with Sarah Davidson and David Churcher. Really great session, so thank you to Casey, Emma and Nick. Been really fascinating. I think the questions are really helpful for us as well, aren't they? Because I think some of the questions are giving us some useful pointers to some of the work that we can be doing around guidance to explain the implementation of IFC, where there are problems or uncertainties around the application for highways agency and maintenance. But there's also a question come up on temporary works. These are all topics which are very relevant, very pertinent, and I think from I'm sure from Casey and Emma and Nick's point of view, actually, this is really great because it gives us something to get our teeth into, can be added into the guidance on the UK BIM framework. But equally, I'm quite sure that the ask is to come and help, because the experience we've had with the guidance for ISO 19650, which I know Emma in particular has been involved in, is that actually by coming in and helping, it spreads understanding, both individually but as teams as well. So we have good debates, it's open, anybody is welcome to be involved in that. And I think it's a win-win for everyone. And that was the point that I was keen to make. So thank you very much.
Okay, so some more general questions. Casey, maybe these are for you. Is there much scope for M&E design consultants to get involved in bSUKI? What about individual membership of BSI instead of company? And then somebody very cheekily has asked, do we need to call it bSUKI or do we call it buildingSMART UK and Ireland?
Okay, working backwards. Either of those work, depending on who you're talking to. If you're talking to someone who doesn't know about buildingSMART UK and Ireland, call it buildingSMART UK and Ireland, at least the first few times you talk about it. Same as any other acronym or abbreviation. But yeah, internally within us, if we say bSUKI, people know what bSUKI is. It's not enforced in any way, so call it what you will. Individual membership and individual, what was it, mechanical, electrical engineers. Absolutely, everyone can engage, and that's why we're holding this session, is to make everyone aware that the engagement that we're looking for is from industry looking to implement Open BIM, as well as sharing and raising the awareness. And I think there is a keenness now. Back when the UK government BIM mandate was created and launched, there wasn't as much knowledge or understanding about what it was, and I think, given the fact that we're now 5 minutes past when this should have been finished and there are still 52 people on the call, there are a lot more people wanting to learn also. So yeah, we need as many people to be involved, whether you're individual or not, whether you're a company or not. Please just fill in the form, we'll be in touch, we'll let you know when the next events are, what help we need. And we really can start to raise awareness in a much wider group at a level that, as I said earlier, means that we can't, we don't describe it in a way that you need to be a wizard to understand. So there are lots, if it means that someone from a mechanical engineering background can come and understand what it means for them and take it and share it with their colleagues and co-workers, absolutely brilliant. That's exactly what we need.
Okay, thanks, Casey.
I think that was all.
There's a question on the form you've asked people to complete. What's the difference between building and construction rooms options? So it's
That's the
question
one
8.
for Nick, I think.
Okay.
I think it's just historical in a way that, you know, the building group has obviously been heavily attended by the design side, whereas the construction room is the forum where international companies, in particular construction companies, get together to discuss the digitization of the construction process. It's heavily attended by construction companies from the Far East and Japan, who are looking to achieve not just levels of automation, but levels of information sophistication that we don't see in the UK. So it's there is always overlap between the rooms. That's inevitable. You know, the airport room, you could say, why isn't it part of ports and harbours? Why isn't it part of construction? Why isn't it part of building? I think the emphasis in the airport room has been on operational processes and so on. So the rooms, they have their flavours.
Okay. I've heard about a buildingSMART international group looking at open CDEs. How do people get involved with this?
That's being handled in the technical room. And yes, indeed, it's an initiative. There's activities at CEN, at European standards level, and at buildingSMART International. So it's a question of getting involved with the technical room discussions.
Okay. Where can we see a list of proposed projects and active projects?
Oh, buildingsmart.org. I can't give an exact reference off the top of my head, but I think the buildingSMART International Communications and so on has undergone a revolution in the last 2 years with the better resources, and so you'll find, or should find, that buildingsmart.org has links and pages to cover most of those questions.
Okay. How are public consultations initiated? This person hasn't seen them publicly announced.
Well, they are announced through, you can follow buildingSMART International, either on LinkedIn or Twitter. And most of the consultations I pass through to the the UK BIM Alliance newsletter. So yeah, join in.
Okay. 3 more questions and then I think we're done. How do we encourage clients to avoid specifying all this, IFC, etc., and then also specifying compliance with their existing conflicting standards guidance?
I think that's very much a part of their wider digital transformation. And I think we all, in whatever role we're playing as part of a project, we all kind of owe it to ourselves and the industry to try and inform and influence people wherever we can. And hopefully we'll be in a position where we can make those changes or make a difference. It's by the time decisions have been made and there is a project underway or it's reached construction, it's normally too late at that point.
But I think, Casey, I think that is where then we can show how IFC is an important part of supporting ISO 19650 and the UK BIM framework, isn't it? So I think us being able to work together to show actually the utility and value of IFC, as Emma so clearly presented, and how that then needs to cascade into the exchange information requirements is absolutely the work that we need to do. Is to, and the massive feedback we've had is that it's a lack of understanding is exactly what we can work at. But we have got that framework to really start pushing and getting the understanding of clients and stopping that happening, haven't we? I think the opportunity is there for us, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a wide network of people, of consultants, of people who are just keen to do things, and the advice is there. It's all written down in the ISO that people should be ideally specifying one type of information delivery process, and the one that works ideally with them and with future working methods.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, go on, Nick.
Oh, just to say that ISO 19650 is still developing, and work has begun on ISO 19650 Part 4, which will put the data quality case in the center of the ISO 19650 suite.
Okay.
And I think also, Pam, sorry to keep on interjecting, but I think that, so I think Nick's point about that the ISO 19650 gives the means to actually start developing quality digital twins, which can then support the national digital twin is a really strong case for why we need to keep pushing together, and why this actually complements the works that CDBB and the Digital Framework Task Group are doing around the being able to integrate that. So I think that was an excellent point that Nick was making there.
How will temporary works be defined within IFC4, as many infra projects have significant TWKs to enable the permanent works?
There is already representation within IFC of temporary works as resources, construction resources. And of course, you can also represent time eventing within IFC, so that their construction and removal, or incorporation in the works or whatever, can be represented. So I think we have it already.
Okay, thank you. And the final request is, where can they get a copy of IFC ×3?
I talked about IFC 4x3, I think, which is what they mean. IFC 3 never existed.
Okay.
Typos abound. It will be on the buildingsmart.org website, or specifically, I referenced the technical.buildingsmart.org website in about 2 weeks' time. If anyone is, yeah, that's okay.
That's it. That's all the questions answered.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Nick, Emma, and for Pam, and the other 44 people that are all still on the call. Well done. I hope you've enjoyed it. Also, hot off the press, as of midday today, the National Digital Twin Hub was launched, soft launch, so people can go and have a look at that at digitaltwinhub.co.uk. For anyone who's interested in digital twins and offering their experiences. But thank you very much to everyone, and I look forward to seeing you either this afternoon at the UK BIM Alliance Forum and our next event in around about 3 months.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hey, thanks everyone.
Nice.